I have always been captivated by the thrill of horror movies. Here is something about the adrenaline rush they bring that feels almost addictive. This particular story takes me back to the time when my friends Jake, Oliver, and I decided to push the boundaries of our fears. It was the weekend after we had watched Phantom Echoes, a movie about a cursed house that lured its residents to their doom. The chilling concept of supernatural entities had left us with an unsettling curiosity, one we foolishly decided to explore. It started one Friday evening. Jake had been scrolling through urban legends on his laptop when he stumbled upon an article about an old abandoned mansion just outside our town. "Guys, you won't believe this," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. Here is a place called the Hawthorne House, about a 30-minute drive from here. People say it's cursed, that anyone who steps inside never comes out the same. Sounds like the plot of every horror movie ever, Oliver quipped, lighting a cigarette. But I could see the intrigue in his eyes. What's the story behind it? Jake leaned closer to the screen, his face illuminated by the dim glow of his laptop. Apparently, the house belonged to a man named William Hawthorne, who lived there with his daughter, Lily. They say Lily fell in love with a traveling musician. When her father found out, he went into a rage and locked her in the attic. She died there, alone and heartbroken. After that, strange things started happening. People claimed to hear her crying at night, or see her shadow in the attic window. Some say her father went mad, and, well, you get the idea. The story had an eerie allure, the kind that tugged at the curious corners of your mind. Against my better judgment, I found myself saying, "We should check it out." Jake's face lit up. "You're serious?" Oliver smirked, exhaling a puff of smoke. "Why not? It's not like we have anything better to do. Let's see if the ghost of Lily Hawthorne wants to hang out." And just like that, our fate was sealed. The next evening, we piled into my beat-up sedan and set off toward the infamous Hawthorne House. The drive was uneventful, but the air grew heavier as we left the city lights behind. The countryside was bathed in the pale glow of a full moon, the empty roads stretching endlessly ahead of us. "Are we really doing this?" I asked, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. "Absolutely," Jake replied from the back seat, clutching his flashlight like a weapon. "Don't back out now." We reached the house just before midnight. It loomed before us like a shadowy titan, its silhouette stark against the starry sky. The once grand mansion was now a husk of its former self, with ivy crawling up its crumbling walls and shattered windows staring out like hollow eyes. The iron gates hung ajar, creaking softly in the wind. "Well," Oliver said, stepping out of the car. "Isn't this charming?" Jake grinned, his excitement undiminished. "Come on. Let's see if this place lives up to the hype." The front door was slightly ajar, as if inviting us in. It groaned on its hinges as we pushed it open, the sound echoing ominously through the cavernous interior. The air inside was thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. Moonlight filtered through the broken windows, casting eerie patterns on the floor. "This place gives me the creeps," I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's the point," Jake replied, aiming his flashlight toward a grand staircase that spiraled up into darkness. "Let's start with the attic. If Lily's ghost is anywhere, that's where she'll be." Reluctantly, we followed him. The stairs creaked under our weight, each step sending a shiver down my spine. The walls were adorned with faded portraits, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow us as we ascended. At the top of the staircase, we found a narrow hallway that led to a trapdoor in the ceiling. A rickety ladder was propped against the wall beneath it. "Ladies first," Oliver joked, gesturing for Jake to go ahead. Jake rolled his eyes and climbed the ladder, pushing the trapdoor open. A wave of cold air rushed down, carrying with it the scent of mildew and something faintly metallic. He hoisted himself up, shining his flashlight around the attic. "It's empty," he called down. "Come on up." One by one, we climbed into the attic. The space was dimly lit by the moonlight streaming through a small, grime-covered window. Cobwebs hung like curtains, and the floor was littered with debris-sold newspapers, broken furniture, and an overturned rocking chair. In the corner, a music box sat on a dusty table. "Cliché," Oliver muttered, picking up the music box. He wound it up, and a haunting melody began to play, the notes echoing eerily in the stillness. "Put that down," I snapped, a knot of unease tightening in my chest. "Relax," he said, setting it back on the table. "It's just a music box." But as the last note faded, we heard something that made our blood run cold, a faint, muffled sobbing coming from somewhere below. We froze, our eyes darting toward the trapdoor. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Jake nodded, his face pale. "It's probably just the wind," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "That didn't sound like the wind," Oliver said, gripping the flashlight tighter. It sounded like someone crying. The sobbing grew louder, more distinct. It was unmistakably a woman's voice, filled with anguish. My heart pounded as I glanced at my friends. "We need to leave," I said, my voice trembling. "Now." Jake hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. But before he could respond, the trapdoor slammed shut on its own, the sound reverberating like a gunshot. "What the hell?" Oliver shouted, rushing to the trapdoor and tugging at it. It wouldn't budge. The sobbing stopped. In its place came a chilling silence, followed by the creak of footsteps on the floor below. "This isn't happening," I muttered, backing away from the trapdoor. "This can't be happening." The footsteps grew louder, ascending the staircase with deliberate, measured steps. A cold draft swept through the attic, extinguishing Jake's flashlight. We were plunged into darkness. "Turn it back on," Oliver hissed. "I am trying." Jake fumbled with the flashlight, but it refused to cooperate. In the faint moonlight, we could see the attic door slowly creaking open. A shadowy figure stood in the doorway, its features obscured, but its presence unmistakably malevolent. "Run," I whispered, my voice barely audible, but there was nowhere to run. The figure stepped into the attic, its movements unnaturally jerky, like a marionette controlled by invisible strings. As it moved closer, we could see its face, or what was left of it. The figure resembled a young woman, her features twisted in a grotesque mix of sorrow and rage. Her eyes burned with an otherworldly light, and her mouth moved as if whispering something we couldn't hear. "Lily," Jake breathed, his voice trembling. The figure's head snapped toward him, and a deafening scream filled the attic. The force of it sent us